I'm self-taught. I took art classes, of course, in school, but I always thought I had no creativity. It wasn't until I was 29 and a good friend of mine was beading jewelry, and she had a show at her house, and we were all looking at the beaded necklaces and bracelets she'd made. And I just thought to myself, oh wow, if Kate can do that, I bet I can. So I went to Ben Franklin and picked up a cheap box of tools, pliers and wire cutters and beads and beading supplies, and I started beading necklaces, the real simple ones, and then I started beading more complex ones.
Wow.
And that's kind of how I got started. So, and everything I've learned since then is really all self-taught. I started making more and more because I wasn't finding my own aesthetic in the stores. So I started making jewelry to fit my own aesthetic. So making it basically for myself, and then making pieces that would fit my family and friends and gifting them. I don't sketch. I don't typically sketch my designs. I just think about things and I think it through in my mind. When it's something special that I want to create something unique and one of a kind, I do have a long process, and I don't take many of those custom pieces just because I do take a long process, but I conceptualize it in my mind, and I build, and I go back and forth with the design and on that, and then once I've firmed it up in my mind and I know what materials I'm going to use and what direction, I just start with the raw materials and I start fabricating. I like to work by hand, so I don't typically use tools like power tools.
Oh wow.
You see, I use files and sandpaper and hammers. I finish everything by hand.
Wow, yeah.
I use a butane torch, so I don't have a big fancy torch. I keep it pretty low profile. I'm very cognizant of the environment. And I taught myself, so after I was beading, I started working with wire, and I'll show you some of the first pieces. So this was from a collection, my first collection, and this was in 2012, and I called it Abstractions of Copper. So each piece, I made 12 pieces, and they were all unique, but the last two pieces from that collection, so that was really working with wire. So I really like to, I'm a very abstract designer. From my 2016 collection, and this is the sketches. These are my initial sketches. This is one collection I did actually sketch out, and these are the realized pieces that I just traced on. I wanted to marry men and women, the strength of a man and the strength of a woman, and bring in the East and the West as far as the world is concerned, Asia and the West, and then structured and organic. And so each piece, and then I wanted to give homage to women that had left their mark in the world, so had done something positive for humanity and were recognized for it. So each piece is, I looked at the woman's history and I developed a piece that would speak to that woman, but would also speak to the overall aesthetic of the collection. So this one is for Sojourner Truth, and then each arm of this really speaks to her outreach, because she went out campaigning and speaking for women's rights and abolition. This one is for Amelia Earhart. So the circle here represents the globe, and this piece here actually moves a little bit, and this represents her flight, and just as she moved around the globe. This one is for Marie Curie. This is an angle of her work in sciences. So they really span a wide era of women. This one is the oldest. This one is from an Indian mystic and poet named Mirabai. So this really was the beginning of the collection, and it's got that really Eastern feel to it, almost like Chinese temple architecture. So these are the pieces I have left in that collection. Oh, this one is my favorite. There's two actually left. This was not a popular collection. I was very sad because I'm a strong supporter of women. This one is for this. Look at this. I love it. This is for Boudica. And she wore this bronze brooch, and these are the spears for the warrior she wore. So you see the puzzle in here? In the metal. So this was two pieces, and I cut that puzzle piece into it, so that when the two come together, they form one.
That's really nice detail.
And then this was for Mary Wollstonecraft. But yeah, you see so that really pushed me, stretched me, because I had a lot of linear sections there, but then I wanted to bring in the organic too, but really balancing out that feminine and masculine and east and west. So I enjoyed that collection. It's not something I'd like to keep going back to because I don't really like linear and structured pieces. I like more free flow
Yeah.
and organic pieces, but it was a good collection. So I tap into my own, into what moves me as a person.
Yeah.
And then whatever I'm feeling at the time, something will strike me, like this piece that I wear this every day. This is a piece I made a number of years ago, and I call this Out on a Limb. And so I made it at a time when I was feeling out on a limb. And I was working with argentium silver. And argentium is really as a purer than sterling, and it doesn't need solder to fuse it to create combined pieces. So you can torch it and it fuses to itself. So I'd made this, I was just playing around with it, and I created this little stick person. And then I was creating a branch series for a new collection, and I had both pieces on my workbench. And as I said, I was feeling out on a limb at that point in my life, and I just kind of slid the two together. And it was just like an aha moment. And it's like, oh my gosh, this guy needs to be on this branch. He's out on a limb. And it's now my favorite. I did cast that piece. I did cast 10 pieces. UCI World Championships was held in Richmond in 2015. And a marketing firm reached out to me and wanted to know if I would be interested in partaking in that. So I made some bicycles. So here's the bicycle. So this is, you've got, see, there's the R, there's the V, and there's the A.
Oh yeah.
That's a little on the crude side, I will say, looking back now. I did use a hand saw to cut this out. So you'll see you'll notice when you go through your work, you'll look back at some of your older work, and as your skills improve. But they're all part of your journey. This is one of my early beaded pieces. This is one I used to teach from. I used to teach jewelry classes at Hope Church, and they'd have a summer program. So this is really combining beadwork, wire work, and incorporating fiber and texture.
Yeah.
So
That's really interesting.
It was a good learning piece, and using found objects. So this is a pebble I picked up at the beach, and it has a little pebble wedged in the hole that nature made. So I called this Between a Rock and a Hard Place. I used to name my pieces. Early on, I gave everything a name.
Do you not anymore?
I don't. One of the reasons I don't. I mean, some pieces I do, but for sales purposes, when you're selling, and Etsy is where I do a lot of sales. If you name a piece in your title on Etsy with a cool name that relates to you, then who's going to search for that term? So you really have to look at different sales techniques. That's, I mean, if you're going into the art and you're pursuing this as a career, you have to look beyond the creating of the art itself. You have to look at how you're going to market your art, how you're going to reach your consumer, how you're going to resonate with your consumer. So those are all also how you're going to price your art.
Oh yeah.
There's a whole lot that goes into it, and you really have to be a good salesperson. I have done lots of art shows, and the biggest was the American Craft Council show in Baltimore.
Oh, I feel like I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's a big show, and it's kind of it's not an easy show to get into as an artist. And I did that show, and I've been invited back every year since to do that. But to be honest, I moved away from doing art shows for a few reasons. It was good for me early in my career, because it does give you exposure, and it gives you when you interact with the customer, you get direct feedback and immediate feedback on your work.
Yeah.
So that's good. You can grow from that, and you can also network with people and meet people. Now it doesn't serve me business wise. I have a steady stream of income, a steady stream of work, a loyal following, and I personally prefer to make on demand. So I make everything to order.
Oh yeah.
So I keep raw materials, and then when an order comes in, I make the order and ship it out. Every now and then I'll do a collection, and when I want to push myself and stretch myself. But if I'm getting consistent custom orders, I stretch myself in those ways, and it gives the customer the creativity to, even though they may not have any creative side to themselves, when you're picking different ear jackets and studs to wear each day, you're being creative in that moment. And so I think a lot of my customers appreciate the arts, but maybe are not artistic. Copper was my first metal to work with, and if I would recommend anyone getting into jewelry work with copper early on in their career, just because you can do so many things with copper. It takes the color so well. You can torch it and get a rainbow of colors. Literally, you can get purples, pinks, blues, greens, oranges, and then a blackened color. You can dip it in liver of sulfur and get purples and blues, and then darkened. This is what the collection I showed you earlier, the copper. So copper is a great, I love using copper, but again, copper tarnishes, and I personally can't weigh base metal. So silver is definitely my favorite, and that's my customer favorite too.
Yeah.
What I kind of do is, I think about, where do I want to take my jewelry next? What haven't I done? Where would I like to see it go? So that's kind of movement. Three-dimensional work is what I want to do. Is what I'm looking to do next. So this is a sketch I've made, and this would be the first dimension back here. This piece will have it looks flat there, but it'll sit more horizontal, and then these pieces will be behind it. And then trying to get a moving piece, I really want to work on, that will be a new collection.